The Allen Perspective.
You rolling? All right, so why don't you do me a favor and introduce you to my people, yourself. I want your name and then maybe why you feel like you've been a relevant part of cannabis, as well as how has cannabis been a relevant part of you. Is that fair enough?
Sure, yeah. My name's Stephen Lee, and I'm an original native of California, born and raised there. And I always was part of the family that was pretty much, you know, drugs were a no-no, cannabis was inclusive of that. And but when I kind of learned about cannabis was in 1994, and I learned.
How old were you then, Steve?
Oh God! So '94, I was 30.
So you didn't find this at 16 years old?
No. Actually, I mean, I think maybe 16, 17, I had tried it one time, and that was it. And then when I was younger, I had tried it a few times, but I really was, always very skeptical, about what I'm doing. I had a uncle who was a heroin addict, so we had this, thing in our family that,
that kind of exposed
that
drugs.
Stigma, yes, exactly. That you may become a drug addict.
Yeah.
So I always had that, fear.
Sure.
That fear of, going forward. And even when I knew and had heard that cannabis was good for you, and there were reasons why people could use it that was extremely therapeutic, I still was against it because of that, in my own self-indulgence or my own self-use. And until 94. In 94, the doctors were just like, they'd given up pretty much on finding, why I was, couldn't continue to keep food down, as well as liquid. It was, then maybe get me back onto eating something. But I mean, if they tried
So can you tell me what that diagnosis is?
Well, the original diagnosis, because they could not determine it, first they determined it as an eating disorder, but then they had to rule that out because I didn't fall under everything to make it classified under a bulimia. Instead, it was just an involuntary. I wanted to definitely have a drink of water, but that water wasn't staying down. We're going to give you a pill to hopefully kill this, this urge to throw up, but that's coming up too with the water. We're going to give you that in liquid form, have you sip on it, it's coming up. And it was just, I was at the end. They were, telling me I had liver damage and I was destroying my kidneys. So.
And you were 30.
Yeah, I was 30 years old. So, and I had just around that same time, few years before, I had gone on a weight loss diet. I was like over 400 pounds. So I got down to like 240, somewhere around there. And within that, I mean, I did it through doctors. I didn't, it wasn't just something haphazard. I had doctor supervision, yet it was still a rapid weight loss. But
is that what triggered this?
So that was why they were trying to classify it as a bulimia, because that is what can trigger that for some people that are in dieting in that type of a stringent diet situation. However, with mine, although that was how the very first situation happened, after that it was nothing to do really. It was more so to do with just the inability to control the gag reflex. And because of that, and because of the inability to control the nutrition that was coming into myself, I fell under the wasting syndrome. So whenever I'm sick, nowadays even, if I am to the point where I'm not keeping down liquid even, then I know that I've entered into my wasting syndrome. So I need to figure out where the best cannabis is going to be to make sure that, I put a halt to that.
To sustain.
Yeah, so that I can get, healing. And that's, essentially why I've used cannabis. And, in that, period between then and 94 to now, I mean, I feel like I'm grateful, and I've been just super blessed to come across so many people in so many different demographics and so many different lives, so many people in different levels of, suffering, and wow, it's powerful. But you look at it and you still find that, people still look at the use of cannabis, slightly frowning, and...
You hit me there because you said it earlier, and not in that way, but I just had flashbacks myself of, I remember I've smoked with people at the end of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've smoked with people for the first time to hopefully they can find that relief. And that's a journey, bro. Like,
it is. It is.
And that story's in all of us in the culture. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It
like,
is.
That's what's, you got me on that one.
Yeah. It's powerful stuff. When you find your, I know when I, here, cannabis was working for me, and I was going to the San Francisco Buyers Club, and met Dennis Perone. He was my first caregiver, and like right away it was, just a cool induction into that community as well. He was gay. He was in the LGBTQ community, was just super, super, tremendously woven there, and just very tight knit. And it was like a great, introduction to them as a whole reality. I mean, I had family who was LGBTQ. However, it was like that whole entire community, and seeing it, there in front of you was like, wow, this is incredible how these people love each other so much they want to take care of each other like on the constant. I mean, that was like an amazing thing to see. And even though, cannabis was working for me, I still hadn't really seen somebody at that, like you're talking about, at that moment of suffering where cannabis was working for them critically in an immediate fashion. I hadn't got to see that yet. But we were at the...
What was the first time?
We were at the San Francisco Buyers Club when Dennis had moved the building to the huge building off of Market Street, ginormous one. And it was like 3 stories or something. It might have been 4. One was like a office, and the other 3 floors were different levels of cannabis. And it's like when he moved to that building, there was an area on one of the floors where the seating, each area had a seating like this. Each area had a consumption and kick-it area. But this particular one had like a cove. I can't remember the floor we were on. More than likely the, super high top, green bag, because that was one of my favorites. But anyway, we're there, and there was a gentleman and his caregiver next to me. And he started to have an epileptic seizure. And that caregiver took this big rip and literally held his face and blew it in his face. And within seconds, I watched this person just go back to sitting there normal and talking. And I was like, holy mackerel. That was like a powerful thing to see. And it was like right then I'm like, you know what? No, I am like all in. Like, I know I've been all in, but like I'm all friggin' in now. And that was the moment. That was really the moment that I decided it was a no holds barred. I don't care.
Who sees me?
My story is my story. And if you don't like my story, I don't really, figure then mine's applicable to your life then, you know what I mean? But this is my story. This is what I got to share. And if it's going to make you better, then great. And hopefully your story makes me better, and we all can continue to get healthy together.
I dream of a world where everybody comes out of that cannabis closet.
Boom.
Right? Because for me, I know what it did for me, and I know what it did for a lot of people around me. Like, we just that needs to be a thing. Like, we recognize it in other cultures. Let's recognize it in cannabis culture.
Yeah.
The canna closet is a real thing. And we need people to come out of it.
Yeah.
Because the amount of healing that can happen from that influence is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think that's a testament from, like, this is how many years ago? 30 years ago, near about it?
Somewhere.
And 2,500 miles away, and that still probably needs to be one of the biggest things that happens. So that's interesting. That's an interesting.
It is. My father right now is on, backing up. Although my parents were conservative, my mom and stepfather, once they knew that I was in full support of medical cannabis in California for the passage of the first Proposition 215, they were on board to support me. They were on board 100% to support me. You know, they didn't necessarily like everything that I might have accepted in my journey with cannabis. They might not have, been 100% in approval of that. However, when it came to cannabis and my health, they were like 100% supportive.
I know what that feels like too.
And
so
it was like really wonderful. I'm like, damn. I mean, they're like passing up some like big obstacles in their life to be able to say, I support my son. And same thing with my father and stepmother, same thing. But it was none of them ever, were consuming cannabis in any form really ever,
So you describe what the culture kind of looked like early on, and you've touched so far on how cannabis helped you as a patient, but you had an influence in the culture as well, right? So it didn't just influence you, but you took a role, right, and got active, and even got into the business, right?
I did,
So let's hear that.
And all that was actually in the beginning was deliberate, and then it just everything became organic, and when I say deliberate at the beginning, that was...
You had the thought.
And I just was like, whatever I got to do to support medical cannabis, I just want to keep the ball rolling, and I knew that Dennis Perrone and I, who was the co-author of Proposition 215 in California, my first caregiver, he taught me a lot in just our conversations that we had about, where cannabis should go legally and what he envisioned, and people not being arrested for trying to get something to make them feel better, and I lost my train of thought. It was that purple.
That Jeopardy.
Backing up here. What was it you asked?
I said, what were your influences and your inputs? Yeah.
Thank you. So, because of that connection with Dennis at the San Francisco Buyers Club, I felt like it was your responsibility that in a collective you took care of somebody else in that collective, and that's what we were. We were a collective of patients, and so as years went on, people have always come to me. They knew I knew how to cook it. And, when you first start as a patient years ago, they gave you a little brochure on, different ways to consume, and, making tinctures and butters and oils. That was all part of it. And so I always had people come to me and say, teach me how to make it so that I can utilize it. I don't want to smoke it, or, I have a hard time smoking, or what have you. And so that kind of started just a trend. And, whenever I was in any kind of platform, I spoke, openly about what I used for medication. And always felt that I shouldn't have to say what I'm using for medication or why I'm using it, because if you're taking any other kind of medicine, you don't have to explain yourself on why you're having to take that medication. So there's that other part of it too, that you're just like, it's a little bit offensive, but I'm going to go ahead and let that one slide, until everybody gets it.
Yeah.
But I lost my freaking train of thought again, man. You shouldn't have got
Jeopardy got my ass too.
Right. Anyway, so there we go. I'm back. I feel like because I'd been doing that cooking and stuff, I'd always, had friends that needed it. Well, in 2010, beginning of 2010, I had gone into a brand new dispensary in Sacramento area. It was actually in the unincorporated area of Sacramento in California, but so it was really technically a hot area. But I went in anyway, and I got to talk to the guy who, the collective of people that started it, and he was the main guy, and we just chatted it up, and he said, "Oh, you were one of Dennis's patients?" And I said, "Yeah." And he pulled out of the drawer this butter that somebody had made that came by and, solicited it. And he's just like, "Can your butter look better than this butter?" And I looked at it, I said, "Pop the lid." And he popped the lid, and I said, "Yeah, that butter's made out of sticks." And he's like, "Can you make butter?" I said, "Yeah, I can make butter." And then he said, "Would you mind doing that for us?" And I said, "We need to talk about that." So we did. Him and I talked about it, and I said, "I will gladly make it for you, but I'm asking you, if we develop a edible company together, that I ask that my edibles be something that is budget friendly for those who are ill. I don't want people making a ton of profit off of it. I want it to be for sick people, because that's why I learned, and that's the reason I have that knowledge, was to get people healthy, and I don't want to just destroy that." Really? And he said, "I agree." So we went into business together and opened Uncle Buck's Bakery, and we opened that in end of 2010, I believe.
So there should be some stuff online that we could pull and like.
You should be able to. I know that we had to take some stuff down because of a cease and desist order from a very prominent sporting type facility. So I know a lot of things were taken off as much as possible, but I think if you hunt, you might be able to find something. But yeah, so we started that, and he had his dispensary, so he wanted to be a house brand. So we started this business together, became a house brand with him, and then it just blew up. It just, we wanted to take it farther. I had other obligations with my family. So basically, I actually turned around and stayed on as a CEO, or as a manager, and really kind of managed the kitchen, promoted the kitchen, and then stayed on in that capacity while I still did a capacity for him with his dispensary. And so I stayed on for a while and did it that way and kept his ball rolling. But when I left the industry, things were just tough to have a kitchen there. And so he went ahead and put the business on the back burner, but he still has the business, and him and I are still good buddies, and so he's probably going to end up launching it again at some point.
That'd be cool.
But yeah. So I did have, just my role with the business.
How long did you run with that?
From 2010 to 2012 is when I left. I left the industry really because the industry was going recreational, and I had been, a heavy face for medical for years. And so I just felt like it was my time to step aside, really. Not necessarily really realized it when I did decide to, stop and just be like, I need to just, carve something different for myself. But when I did and step back, I'm like, whoa, this is really, now I see what I've been, my conscience has been telling me for, a half a year here. And now that that part is, that part of the development of the industry is over, it's a different feeling, because now I'm coming in as, any other consumer, really.
Yeah. How's your cannabis infused Sprite treatment?
Very good. And I'm going to go ahead and go here and drink a little of this water.
Water instead.
Yeah.
That my frozen lemonade's got me too.
Yeah.
All right, so free weed. Tell us about that.
So the dispensary that was operational, that I had started the edible business separately as a house brand for that dispensary. They were in a part of Sacramento County that was unincorporated, so it was considered to be not cannabis friendly, and but they opened anyway, and but they kept that operation going, and we, as a team of people that worked for Magnolia Wellness, which was what that dispensary was. That team of people, we all had our own intricate roles in keeping, that dream alive. And so they were able to stay in there. They actually established in late 2009, and then opened their doors, I want to say it was like January 6th of 2010, like right in there somewhere. And then went all the way through to Christmas, December 11th. December 2011. And so they went all the way to, that was when we had a federal letter issued to the dispensary that we needed to vacate, and or else basically they were going to seize the building, which we were renting. So, or I was not renting, we as a team, And so we knew that everybody knew it was pretty much how it was going to be. So,
what was the tone in the room after that?
Well, at first it was like we were all, just, we had our own, moments of, emotion about it. But the owner, or I should say the main gentleman who, was part of the collective, Dave, and he was just like, how do we let people know? How do we let, I want to say it was like 40,000 patients or something. How do we let 40,000 patients know, that this is what's going on? How do we let them know, who do we have them call? Who do we have them flood, their phone systems with, Who do we have them send mail to? Who do we, So we all just came up with a plan of blasting, their entire, political realm of Sacramento, and who we needed to target, all the way to actually Kamala Harris at the time, Attorney General. And so everyone got a specific reason of why they were going to get, flooded with phone calls. Hers was she wasn't telling the feds to get away. She was leaving it as a moot point. So that was a frustrating thing. However, it did move a mountain or two. Within 24 hours, she was making a statement. So that was good. Be the power of people, it happened. But it was Dave's decision in the end with us leaving, the area, is he decided to blow up a banner the size of, we had a banister, a second story when you walked in the lobby before you got into the dispensing area. And then there was a second story banner, and that was a railing there. So we did a full-size drop banner all the way to the floor of the letter. And so then we let people know as they walked in. And we had a table and I want to say we had a phone, or we had a laptop. So we were ready for them to start sending mail and putting their name on a drafted letter. And we had there so that we could have, our last bit of, what we wanted to say, for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did. And the patients were upset, and the patients, made noise and, called whoever they could call. We still knew it was inevitable. So we're like, what's next? And Dave decided, it's Christmas. We already have a toy, because we already had a toy drive going. We'd been doing toy drives and different, various things for our local charity that was like right there with us,
Yeah.
And so we had a toy drive already going, and we were just like, screw it, it's still Christmas, and we're still having a party. So we literally had a great big huge ginormous Christmas party, and in that we contacted somebody from Associated Press to speak about what we were going to do. And the deal was we were deciding, because we were a collective and the cannabis was owned by the patients as a collective, then we were going to give that back to the patients, so it was free weed. And the Associated Press broke the story, and we had calls all the way from New York about how they could get there and get their free weed that day. And we said that's going to be a very expensive trip, because the free weed is that everybody got a free gram of whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
So you walk in, but if you wanted to be a patient that day, then or of the collective, you literally could sign up to be a patient of the collective that day too, and walk in. And then they gave different discounts on all the products and stuff to, for the patients, so they get a big stash before we went out. But that's how we went out, and the free weed thing. It was just funny to see it on, all over the paper.
We could probably find that. We could probably find that.
You could probably find, yeah. You still couldn't? Damn.
I didn't try that card.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to be able to find it. Dark web probably has it. But yeah, so that's what ended up happening. We just kind of, went out with a bang. But in that too, what was amazing was the reporter who had interviewed me in early 96. He was at the closing of Magnolia Wellness as a reporter, but then came in and talked to me and talked about now his daughter has to use it. And he's in full support of it. Because when he interviewed me, he was very, he was still, decent with the, half acceptance, half not. But you could tell he still was siding on, come on, bro. Y'all are smoking weed. He wasn't that direct, but you could tell that was his, how he was delivering in that interview. But I wasn't offended by it. That's, it was his personal opinion.
Norm.
And his personal journey at that time.
Yeah.
Now he had a daughter who was very ill and found out that this cannabis worked for his daughter, and it was just like, boom. He's like, oh, you were right, man. Amazing. And exactly, it comes around. Same thing with my father. He's on hospice now. He's at home, and he has, with his hospice, he has sundowners. So, where they reach out and scream. And so now he's, using some sort of a cannabis product so that, that's, less of a suffering to him, and my stepmom, hearing that, and just that, fear that you get when you hear him scream out. So, you see it now. You see as that comes full circle, you see your parents, now utilizing it, and it makes you just, it's kind of surreal, honestly. I mean, it's like I don't feel like there's anything that's ever a solid point, just that point that, there are other alternatives that people utilize to feel better, and judgment shouldn't even be a part of it. And so it's just, I guess it's the inability to not shrug how I feel completely about cannabis. and just never sugarcoat it. I guess that's just been it for me. You know
We
what I
got
mean?
that same motive for sure. Yeah,
Huh?
I understand that motive.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, yeah, I feel like people are just just washed in the, the whole old school stigma of marijuana.
and I feel pretty stoned.
Huh?
I said I feel pretty stoned.
You feel pretty stoned?
Yeah.
Are you?
Oh, I'm stoned.
Oh, are you? I'm not stoned at all.
That damn drink got my ass.
Oh, you kept drinking. See, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, how about we just wrap this up with, I am very impressed with what y'all are doing here.
I appreciate it. That means a lot
I mean, it's really good stuff. You know what
from
I'm saying?
somebody that's coming from the culture all the way from the start, really. So
It is really, really great to see because, in regulation in California or wherever you go, I'm sure, is you don't get to have your cannabis anywhere near you anymore,
yeah.
And so this part of this is nice where it brings you back to, the beginnings where, you're at the bar and you're...
I'm hoping to be able to show people that you can do business the right way and still be like this.
Yeah.
Because that hurt my feelings going up to Maine and back and seeing it wasn't that personal experience. It was so separate, and it was like that was.
Well, that was what was so nice when we finally got over here. We're like,
You can have
feels like home.
I never got to know what that home felt like, but I just created me and my wife what we saw it should be.
Yeah.
Because we're in a market that allows us to do that right now.
Yeah.
And so I just hope that we can be an influence on what that can look like.
Yeah.
And know that we're doing a responsible job at it, as well as, something we take very serious. But I hope that it kind of becomes a trendsetter for the industry, because this is it's the way I feel like it should be done.
Is that a wrap finally? I'm going home to the Mrs. Spaghetti.
The Allen Perspective.